All right.
Hi, it's Zai Stevens on another awesome day. You're watching Zai Tries. Today we are going to spend some time with Chloe Riley.
We're here in the North Carolina Museum Outdoor Sculpture Park.
Is it important for someone that's interested in art to go to school for art?
It's an interesting question. I'm going to always say school is important. So if you go to art school, you can learn about materials and techniques that you might not have exposure to otherwise. But you don't have to go to school for art. You can be inspired by nature around you and pick up things and drawing tools and start working on your own without having to have formal education. We have a whirligig here in the park that's made by Wallace Simpson, and he was a farmer. And at 60, he retired and started making whirligigs, and it's one of my favorite sculptures here in the park.
Oh, cool. How does this impact the nature around us?
Interesting, because the art has to come and be installed. So we have different teams that work on the art in the park. We have the conservators that are inside. My job is to clean, maintain, and keep the art protected, but we also have a landscape staff. So if you look around, you can see a well-maintained grass around these sculptures. You've got to make sure that all the equipment doing that is not going to hurt the artifacts, right?
Yeah.
So you have the landscape team coming, and you have the art team working together to make sure that all these sculptures are presented as best as we can.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Is there something about the red paint that makes it special, or is that how it's normally made?
It's a great question. So we have two Desuberos here in the park. We have a red painted one, and then we have one that's just Corten steel. And what's interesting about painted sculptures, if you're out here exposed to the environment, what do you think is hitting this all of the time?
Rain?
Rain and the sun.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So the sun has ultraviolet light, and what's important about that is that fades any paint that's outside. So any sculpture in the park that's painted we have to repaint it every 8 to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's not what we said. So we're gonna go over here to Ernest and Ruth.
So it's like little chat messages.
Exactly.
Do you know what the purpose of these?
These are their speech bubbles?
Yeah.
Well, there's two of them. So if you imagine you sitting in that bench and me sitting in this bench, and we can talk back and forth and be inspired by these speech bubbles, right?
Why is it called Ernest and Ruth?
It's a great question. Do you know who Ernest and Ruth are? They are Hank Willis Thomas's grandparents. So he named them after his grandparents. Do you think your grandparents would like to have something named after them?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nice way to honor their family.
How does this make art more accessible to the public?
What's interesting about these pieces, we only have a couple of outdoor sculptures that you can interact with. So these are benches. They're made to be sat on. You're made to think about what it is that you want to talk about and inspired by these speech bubbles, but you can actually sit on them and interact with them. So it's a way of a lot of the artwork inside you're not allowed to touch, and a lot of the artwork outside you're not allowed to touch. So the ones that you're allowed to interact with are really quite special.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna head over to Geyer. Okay, sounds good. Okay, Zai, we're here at Geyer, which was one of my favorite sculptures here in the park. It was one of the first ones to be installed when we opened up the park itself.
Oh, really?
What do you think of it?
Oh, it's really cool. It's kind of weird how it went like this way.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah. Like in those games when you were in those cars and they give you speed views.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me tell you how it was made?
Yeah.
Okay, so these sculptures are made of concrete. There's an internal structure as well, but I wanted you to look over here. Do you see this circle in the ground?
Yeah.
See how there's this indentation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what that is is that they dug a hole in the ground and they cast the concrete.
Oh, wow.
And then they stood it up, right? So this is the mold that was used to make this.
Oh, wow.
And I love that there's a memory here of the ground where it was carved out in order to make the structure. And it was really truly part of the park, right? Because it was made here.
Do you have to clean it?
No, this is one of my favorite ones because I don't do very much maintenance to it. It takes care of itself. We had to get a boom lift out here because you know what was caught up there? Somebody's kite.
Oh.
So I had to get up there and take the kite down. But for the most part, this one takes care of itself.
Like yellowish black color up there.
It's aging, and so it's changing over time. One of the important parts about conservation is we have to know how things are made, right? So in order to go to conservation school, you have to go to graduate school, which is one step more than college, right? But to get in, you have to have art history. So I know about the artists. I have to have studio art so that when I'm touching the artwork, they know that I'm good enough to not cause damage. But you also have to have chemistry, and that's the really tricky one. I have to know what these materials are and what I can use on them so that it's safe to treat it. And so the production of things and the way that things are manufactured is really crucial to how I'm going to treat it, how it's going to age over time. And so that's why it's really important to know how these things are made. There's so much to see.
I didn't even know they had an outdoor park. This place is huge.
It's huge, I know. And you're only seeing a fraction of it today.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is one of those benches.
How was it commissioned and installed?
What's interesting about these benches, we have benches and we have some bike racks. They're made out of the bars from the youth penitentiary that was here on site. So for some information about the history of the museum, North Carolina decided to have a museum for the state in the 1940s, but it opened up downtown. So it was on Morgan Street downtown. It didn't move here until the 1980s, and the park itself didn't open up until a couple years after that. There used to be a youth penitentiary. When you come in, there's a smokestack still. That's the only thing left of the building itself, but these were made from the bars in the windows. And we have another sculpture over there called Crossroads that is made from the brick from the sculpture too.
Oh, wow.
I think it's really important to have a memory of what this land was and what it was used for before it became a museum park.
What are the general thoughts about this piece?
Well, it's great because you can use it. You can sit and you can read a book, you can talk to your friends, but it also has the history of the site itself. Because the youth penitentiary did affect a lot of people before it became the park itself. Here, part of the theater, that's actually a Barbara Kruger artwork. And if you're looking at it from the sky, it says picture this, but you can only see it if you fly over in a drone or a plane. Here we go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think we saw this when it was like still being worked on.
Absolutely, it took a long time to install.
Wait, so when was it installed?
It opened up just recently. We started installing it in November of last year, but it didn't open up until recently.
Oh yeah, that's where when we came from out the building,
Yeah.
we saw it being installed.
Yeah. What the problem was is this ground cover, you had to have low moisture in the air, so we had to have a really couple dry days.
Wow.
I see his face.
I was told this was supposed to mirror a New York skyline. That's cool. How was it installed?
It's wonderful. This is the newest piece here in the park. It's by Jeppe Hein, and it was installed in a way that there are 75 mirrored columns in a labyrinth that you can walk through. We have a substructure under here that mimics these because all of the sculptures had to be installed individually.
Oh wow.
Yes, so we hope it never moves. This is going to be a permanent installation. But it's wonderful, and you can walk in and around it, and it's really supposed to be one of those interactive art pieces. There are also 3 of these in the country right now. There's one in San Mateo, California, and there's one in New Orleans.
How many interactive pieces are there in the park?
Great question. There's 32 artworks in the park, and the children always like the interactive ones. So we already saw Hank Willis Thomas benches.
Yeah.
We're here at Jeppe Hein, And then the third one is the crystal cloud chamber that you can go inside, and it's a camera obscura in the woods.
Are there any issues with fingerprints?
Oh, there are lots of fingerprints on here.
Oh, no.
But what's important to remember about this is as a conservator, I'm preserving the piece of artwork, so the materials, but also the artist's intent. And what the artist's intent for this one was to have people interacting with it, to walk in and around it. And that involves a little bit of touching, because when you get inside, it's a little disorienting, wasn't it? You saw yourself in all of the mirrors. So I understand why people would touch it.
Yeah.
But this is an interactive artwork, which is what the artist wanted. So we do clean the fingerprints off of it, but not every day. Yeah.
What is your favorite part about working at the museum?
It's a great question. I have a really incredible department. I work for the conservation department, and our role is to protect, preserve, and repair artwork so that it is preserved for hundreds of years.
Wow. Yeah, it was nice to meet you too. Yeah, thanks for hosting. Bye. He drives into the sunset. This has been Zai Stevens with Zai Tries. Thank you so much for joining me today. And a big thank you to the North Carolina Museum of Art. I look forward to you joining me next time on another episode of Zai Tries. See you later.